Mid-Sodor Memories, written and told by Kiefer Adams. Duke awoke from what he thought was the best sleep he had had in years. He had just been brought to the Skarloey railway after being buried in a shed on his old railway for many years. Duke loved the feeling of the warm afternoon sun shining down on him. He had also received a visit from Peter Sam and Sir Handel, who during the days of the Mid-Sodor, where Duke used to work, were known as Falcon and Stuart. As Duke gave a great yawn, he was beginning to wonder what was in store for him for his new working life on the little railway. There was one little engine who was curious about Duke's past, and that was Skarloey. A few months after Duke had settled, he spoke to Peter Sam. "I'm always curious to know how you, Duke and Sir Handel worked well together on the Mid-Sodor," he said. "Well, Duke knows all about the railway more than me and Sir Handel do," said Peter Sam. "It wouldn't hurt to ask him." "Oh, I wouldn't want to bother him," said Skarloey. "After all, I'm much older than he is. He'll probably think of me as some nosy Parker trying to intervene on his work." "He'll be coming back this evening," said Peter Sam. "You can ask him then." Skarloey still didn't feel certain, but Peter Sam had already puffed away to do his work. Skarloey started to ponder. Was it worth asking Duke about the old days? That he would find out himself. True to Peter Sam's word, Duke returned later that evening. Skarloey had been in the shed since the afternoon. He had been acting as relief and was waiting for a call to go and help an engine in need. Duke could tell that Skarloey was noticing him and smiled. "How are you, Skarloey?" he asked. "Never better, thank you," replied Skarloey. "Duke, I was talking to Peter Sam and I was wondering, could you tell me about the Mid-Sodor?" Duke smiled warmly. "I was wondering how long it would be before one of you asked," he puffed. Duke started by telling Skarloey how he saved Falcon, who Sir Handel was known as at the time, from nearly falling off the mountain road. He then recalled the time that he needed the help of Falcon and Stuart, who Peter Sam was then known as, with a picnic train, only to have his strength return when Stuart single-handedly tried to take him to the top station. Duke even told Skarloey about his life on the Mid-Sodor long before Stuart and Falcon came to work there. "Long before Stuart and Falcon came," Duke said, "we had a lot of engines on the Mid-Sodor. There was John, Jennings, Atlas, he worked in the mines, and old Jim. Many engines came and went, but some would say that I outlasted them all. There were 3 engines I remember fondly. Smudger, our former number 2, he suffered the most when his rough riding cost him a trip to the back of the shed as a generator. There was Albert. Albert considered himself to be high maintenance. He learned his lesson the hard way when he burst his safety valve when taking the picnic in my place. Poor engine, wailing for his crew like that. Some engines don't know the respect of their crews and their care," snorted Skarloey. Duke fondly agreed and continued with his story. "Another engine I remember greatly," he said, "was old Tim. He supported me during the railway's opening. He was a kind-hearted engine, always full of life and never afraid to take on anything that came his way.
'Don't you worry about a thing, Duke,'
he would say.
'I got this. All you need is a nice rest.'
I was always pleased when Tim supported me. Such a good engine at heart. The others were okay. Jim suffered bad luck from time to time. Jennings was quick on his wheels. John could memorize every single train before it was taken out. And Atlas knew the mines like the back of my buffers, if I had any." Skarloey was amazed as Duke finished his story. Before long, a relief call came in for Skarloey. He thanked Duke for his stories and set off to retrieve Sir Handel, who of course had derailed near Krosny Kurin. But Skarloey hadn't been the only one listening to Duke's stories. Thomas's driver had been visiting a friend who was working on the little railway and had heard everything. As he went back to Thomas, who was waiting at Crovansgate station with Annie and Clarabel, he was delighted. "You'll never guess what I've just heard, Thomas," he said, and he told him what he heard. "So Duke does exist!" exclaimed Thomas. "Who would have thought it?" Thomas took Annie and Clarabel back to the yards and headed towards the shed. "This is just what the engines will need after a long day, especially with the winter storm coming," he puffed. And Thomas thought about the stories of Duke and the Mid-Sodor Railway all the way home.